There it is. I think in that clip from Barack Obama's speech last night, you heard words that key us in on what the next 4 years could look like. You heard words like investment. You heard words like debt. And you definitely heard there at the end references to warming climate. So let's do this. This is what Barack Obama's agenda over the next 4 years could look like. We have to divide it essentially into short-term and long-term. Short-term agendas are driven by events, not necessarily his desire. His desire is over here, and he's been very clear, we can't wait. That's a quote from President Barack Obama on the things he wants to pursue. But let's start with this. Let's start with events. We know that within the next few months, weeks really, he's going to have to deal with the fiscal cliff, the automatic tax increases and spending cuts that will come to this country at the beginning of 2013. Emily, last night we talked and we said what we learned about Barack Obama's agenda in the short term and how he'll deal with the fiscal cliff is that the influence or the effects are going to be more on tax increases rather than spending cuts. You think that's what we learned last night?
That is what we learned. I mean, we know this. 2/3 of the fiscal cliff will be made up with revenue increases, tax increases. Only a third will be made up by spending cuts. I think we'll see more of that with President Obama.
So you guys, by the way, Buck, Amy, do you think what we have learned regarding the fiscal cliff last night is that basically we're going to have a big fight and Barack Obama is going to hold fast to the idea that the Bush tax cuts are expiring for the wealthiest?
I can't imagine a different outcome than that, Will. I think that it's interesting because while we discussed the fiscal cliff in the past, now it looks like it was incredible politics from the Obama administration to make sure they didn't have to handle this. And now they go into this negotiation with a very strengthened hand. And I think we're just going to see the end result being that taxes get raised. Even if there were spending cuts at some point, they could reinstitute those very quickly. But the issue about taxes, that seems to have been resolved for the foreseeable future. And it means taxes are going up. And by the way, not just on the wealthy. That's just, the first stop on the train. Everybody's taxes are going up soon.
Right.
I'm, I guess, a little bit ambivalent or skeptical about how President Obama is going to approach this, Will, because we saw in the big tax battle over the Bush tax cuts and whether or not to let them expire, that while the president and Democrats in the House and Senate made the argument very vociferously with great gusto that we needed to raise those taxes, at least on the wealthy, at the end of the day, President Obama did sign in those Bush tax cuts and extend them for 2 years and extend them past his reelection because he knew that raising taxes before an election is not a very good idea.
That's a good point.
So
that's a good point,
Amy. He might fold on this. He really might.
Yeah, I don't know if that was a political calculation. I tend to agree with Buck on this. I think you're going to see taxes go up on everyone. I think not extending the Bush taxes for the wealthiest was more of a political calculation.
He kept the Bush tax cuts for every category for 2 years after very vociferously opposing that position.
Well, we think let's
do this. We got to keep moving through a few of these short-term measures. Emily, we talked earlier today about Obamacare. Obamacare's got to be implemented. That's definitely coming.
Yes, I think we need to add this to the list here, and specifically with the implementation of the new health care law, the Obamacare, is the implementation of the Independent Payment Advisory Board, IPAB. And what they will do is they will use price controls rather than real structural reforms in order to try to reduce the cost of Medicare. And the way they will do this is to reduce payments to providers and disincentivize treatments that they believe have not been proven to be
a rationing board, right? A rationing board.
Yeah,
essentially, IPAB is a rationing board.
They're going to defy. They're going to defy the logic of markets over the past 100 years. They're going to institute lower payments for things and assume that there won't somehow be less of it.
Exactly.
So
and to be clear,
this is a magic trick that I'm very excited to see the Obama administration pull off. It's going to be fascinating to see how they do this.
So will Sarah Palin be vindicated?
Just like how they're going to cover 30. They're going to cover 30 million people. It's going to cost everybody less, and there's no problem with this at all.
Hey, Buck, while I have you, Buck, let me ask you this. We know that one of the short-term events that's driving the news right now is Libya. Do you think this will be on President Obama's agenda over the next couple weeks and months?
Yeah, it's going to be on his agenda. It's going to be in his desk for about 5 minutes before he throws anything that's given to him on Libya in the trash. I think it's going to be very hard for anybody to make much more hay of this. Anything that regarding Libya the Obama administration doesn't want to talk about, they're going to claim is either covered by executive privilege or national security secrecy rules. And it's going to be really hard to go beyond this. And quite honestly, their narrative at this point is just going to be Republicans tried this, they tried to politicize this, and it clearly didn't work for them. So let's move on. America has more important things to do, like pay for wind farms.